Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to Angelic Embrace, where we document and narrate the glorious and life-changing near-death experiences from people all over the world. So sit back, relax, know that you are loved, and let's get into today's near-death experience story. Consider subscribing and watching to the end to find out what happens. After I was stabbed, my sister took me to the hospital, which is situated a little farther than a mile away from the location where it took place. Throughout the entire ordeal, she was yelling at me to stay alive. I was attempting to keep my composure despite the fact that I was coughing up blood. My arms and legs were starting to feel quite numb, which was a sign that my body was starting to shut down. As the strength fled my body, I looked up to see the flashing red and blue lights that denoted the entrance to the emergency department of the hospital. They appeared to be so remote from us. I recall reassuring my sister that I was not going to pass away, but urging her to get moving as quickly as possible. My head was resting on my arm as I leaned forward and lay it there, while the index and middle fingers of my right hand were pressed into the incision. My blood was warm, and it felt nice against the chill of my skin, and I thought to myself, so, this is it. The last sounds of consciousness that I can recall are those of my sister screaming. I lowered my head and focused on being ready for whatever was going to happen. My religious upbringing instilled in me the knowledge that there will be a glorious light and a calm. I suppose that's what I've been waiting for all along. Instead, I found that my attention was drawn to the tiny lights that appear if one closes their eyes very tightly. They were moving about at a very rapid pace at first, but after a while, they started to slow down and eventually became less and fewer in number until there was just one left. My field of vision was filled with a single pinpoint of light that seemed to bounce around, leaving behind a trail that seemed to grow upon itself and produce patterns that were either geometric or web-like. These forms appeared to be two-dimensional to me at first, but as I thought about them more, I realized that they were actually growing in size and intensity until they were three-dimensional. I extended my hand in an attempt to come into contact with these forms. A light that was yellowish-brown in color and with a sensation all its own developed in the shadows behind what I saw. It was really calming to look at and gave out an inviting vibe. At that moment, I did not experience any fear. I had the experience of moving through the patterns that were left behind by the light, nearly the same as when you go through a room or house that is covered in cobwebs. But I never had the feeling of being touched. The sensations of movement intensified, and before I knew it, I was moving at breakneck velocities. When I think of this, images of astronauts undergoing training while inside of a giant centrifuge come to mind. On the other hand, I was progressing through things. I'm not sure if I was in a tunnel, a tube, or a huge open space, but all I remember is that I was moving. I was able to make out several voices in my head telling me things like, "Remember, you have to let them know, and you are being shown." It appeared as though there were numerous voices emanating from a variety of locations, but the underlying message was that I should pay attention to what I was going to witness, and that I was intended to remember it. Do not forget. I started to reflect on my life and wondered whether it was going to be like what my auntie always said would happen in the afterlife. That our lives would be replayed for us and we would be evaluated based on how we lived them. But while I was thinking about it, I could see all of the things I'd done throughout my life just as they happened, but quicker, displaying the positive, the negative, and the ugly aspects of everything. I kept everyone in the dark about everything I was proud of as well as every embarrassing little secret I had. But there it was, and this time instead of feeling dread and humiliation for my transgressions, I felt sorrow and shame. I was able to see very clearly that we all have things that aren't great in our histories, but I also realized that we had to take responsibility for all that we do. I was able to view other persons at what appeared to be a lower level than me. I didn't get the sensation that I was hovering above them. Rather, I had the sensation that I was seeing from a higher vantage point, but that my feet were resting on air. I could make out hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of individuals wandering around without a clear destination. Every single person sent out potent vibes of dread, agony, and anxiety. I heard a voice say, "These are the lost," and I looked about. After that, as if it had been reading my mind, it said, "This is real." I began to feel terrified, But even my anxiety was nothing compared to the terror that I got from the folks around me. I couldn't help but think, what is in store for me? I could feel my degree of drunkenness rising as time went on, far more drunk than you could ever fathom. I had no influence over the situation. I yearned for anything or someone that I could cling to. I could hear laughing and giggling that had a childlike quality to it, but it also had an air of seduction about it. It was almost as if it wanted me to believe that it was something that it wasn't, but the alcohol helped me overcome my inhibitions. I could feel a figure approaching me that was neither masculine nor female, neither young nor old, and neither alive nor dead. Every time it laughed, I had the impression that it was making fun of me. It made me angry, but at the same time I was overpowered by an intense want to have sex with this entity. I wanted to have sex with them. Once more, it laughed. You effing little whore. It moved closer to me. I started by gently petting it and then kissing it. I felt even drunker, even more out of control. My consciousness was trying to inform me that this was a terrible idea. Nothing that I had been brought up to believe was morally sound or appropriate made any sense to me at this point. When I turned my head to gaze at the creature, I felt terrified. Despite the fact that I had the impression that everything about this person was flawed, my intense sexual need was gaining control. The wrong age, the wrong sex, and the incorrect morality. It seems to sense the worry I was feeling. It was beginning to transform into a lady as it laid down and extended its legs apart, a key step in the process. Like none I had never seen, very alluring and attractive in appearance, she used all of her might to drag me down. And then she planted a passionate kiss on my shoulder and neck. Again, she let out a chuckle. This time, it was done with a very deliberate aim. I was aware that the aching in my chest was starting to come back. I cast my eyes downward. It was covered in blood in every single spot. The entity started soaking in it like a fish. I felt something grab me. Get out of here. And what are you doing here? Are two common commands. I was encircled by people who were pulling and tugging on me. The question, why are you here? When I looked down, the woman was no longer there. A young girl appeared in her place. She sat up and grinned at me as she did so. I had the impression that I was in a lot of trouble and that I had done something inappropriate. Was I a bad person? The flow of blood remained unabated. I began searching the area desperately for assistance. There were none of them. People started pulling me away and shouting at me, "Remember to tell them." While they did so, the following thing I picked up on was someone exclaiming, "He's conscious. What's your name? And what's your social security number?" Are questions that are commonly asked. How did you get stabbed? And do you know the guy who stabbed you? Were the questions that were asked. It felt like there was no end to the inquiries, but I was still breathing. This is how the start of my new life looked like.